keeping you up to speed on all your Colorado teams. It's time for Coffee Break.
Happy Friday to you all. The weekend is upon us, and the Broncos are back. No more bye week Sundays the rest of the year. And this game this weekend's got some serious playoff implications. And I've got a few things I want to run by my friend Will Petersen here, who's joining me. Will, how are you, man?
I'm great, Richie. It's crazy that last night was Thursday Night Football, and the Broncos will play on that next week. I know we're focused on this week, but we got 2 games in the next 5 days, my friend.
We do. And if you ask me, there was no reason to make that situation a reality. I didn't think you had to flex yourself into an extra Thursday night road game. You actually found a situation where you had the one thing the NFL couldn't force you to do, and it seems like the NFL has all the power in the world. You found the one thing that they actually couldn't make you do by their own rules, and you did it anyways. But we'll have plenty of time to get into that. I want to focus on this game against Indianapolis, which for both teams has very significant playoff implications. If the Broncos win this game, it effectively eliminates Indianapolis from any kind of wild card contention to try to catch you. If they lose this game because of Indianapolis's schedule down the stretch and tiebreaker situations that you have with Indy and the rest of the wild card teams that are chasing for a spot, actually puts a pretty big dent in things for the Broncos.
Yeah, it's basically a playoff game, right? Like, it just feels like a playoff game this weekend. It's the fork in the road game that they've struggled with in recent years, particularly last year on Christmas Eve against New England, that if you won, you were probably going to make the playoffs. If you lost, you weren't. That's the situation we're back in. We've waited, 351 days to get this opportunity again. Can you punch a ticket on Sunday? No. But can you all but ensure yourself you're going to make the postseason for the first time since 2015? Yeah. So the pressure's on these guys. And I really liked Sean Payton on Wednesday talking about he's not hiding that, okay? He's not taking just one game at a time. Sean said multiple times in that press conference I wrote about at denversports.com that he met with the team and went over the stakes and the situation. Richie, they're all adults. They can handle it. And guess what? They can also pull up ESPN.com and look at the NFL standings. So I like the strategy from Sean that he's not hiding from his guys. We win, we're going to the postseason. We lose, we got an uphill battle.
Don't obsess over it, but don't hide from it either. Be true to who you are. And I think you should want, if you're a head coach, or a coach in the Broncos organization or a player in that locker room, I do want them to think, hey, we're a playoff caliber team. We are that, and we're going to go get it. Now, you can't put the cart in front of the horse or look ahead, or you don't want to make it, obsess over it, like I kind of said. But it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and I have a key to this game that I think the Broncos need to, I don't want to say fix, but need to prioritize or focus on.
All right, hit me with it.
They got to start fast. They have to start fast, and they have to finish fast. The latter half of that, they have done that. They have actually played well in comparison to their competition in the fourth quarter when it comes to scoring. But if you take a look at the first quarter, and we'll just limit it to just the Colts here. In the first quarter, the Broncos have a negative 17-point differential through 14 weeks. And then it jumped up to plus 33 in the second quarter and kind of, tapers off or ups and downs from there. But the Colts, if you look at them, they're almost the inverse. They start fast, and they're not a very good team offensively, especially in the passing game. They've been very erratic and inconsistent, and still they tend to outscore their opponents in the first quarter and in the last quarter. So for the Broncos, who we've seen plenty of starts with the Broncos offense, 3 and out to start the game, or an interception on a tipped pass like it was against the Chargers game here.
Or the Ravens game with Lil Jordan, or the Lil Jordan fumble against Carolina.
Sure, yeah. LJH has got some things he's got to work through. But no, my key to this game is they've got to start fast and buck that trend of kind of taking a minute, because clearly you can see by the second quarter, Sean Payton and Bo Nix have got it rolling a little bit. They've outscored their opponents by 33 points in the second quarter through 14 weeks. But Anthony Richardson, for all of his flaws and faults and raw kind of attributes that he has, because this is his first year as a starter due to injury, even though he's been in the league a couple of years, as a full-time starter, I should say. You can't let these guys hang around. No. You can't, because he's athletic enough and he's got a rocket arm that is strong enough that if you leave the opportunity for, God forbid, a Raheem Moore, Jacoby Jones kind of situation to happen, or you're hanging around, or Jonathan Taylor, who not long ago was leading the league in rushing and, having MVP caliber, almost 2,000-yard type of seasons. I don't want to leave things up to chance when this is what we have on the line.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because honestly, this was a theme that I had talked about earlier in this week, is the bye week blues, right? And that graphic you pulled up is phenomenal, because I didn't know those numbers off the top of my head. I'm sure our viewers didn't either. I outlined a scenario when I was doing Denver Sports Tonight with Marcello Romano on 104.3 The Fan. I'm like, well, what if they come out slow and they're down 14-0 because of the bye week? And I'm not saying they all went to Cancun for a week, but Sean did say he gave them Monday night to Monday morning. Okay. He gave them a full week after that Browns game. And it's kind of human nature to say, yeah, we're right back in it. We're right back in it. But it's why I didn't like the bye when I felt like most people did. They're like, oh, this team was just desperate for some rest, such a late bye. I don't like a bye when you're rolling. And to me, it felt like the Broncos were rolling. I mean, they had won 3 games in a row, still have. But Richie, I did outline a scenario where, what if you look up and it's 14-0? They can dig out of that hole, but you don't want to dig out of the hole. So the combo of they've started slow in the first, the Colts have started fast, and rust from the bye, I think 205, 225, whatever it is on Sunday, we're going to be sweating the first half hour of that game.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you look at what happened with the Buffs, who are another team that I think was chronically notorious for starting out slow, but they just had enough talent, especially offensively, that eventually the cream rises to the top, and you kind of out-talent the other team, especially at the skill positions. But they started out slow against Texas Tech, and then that became kind of a nail-biter there for a little bit, and things kind of got ugly in the second half. They started slow against Kansas, and guess what you couldn't do? Catch back up.
Couldn't dig out of it.
Sometimes you just can't catch back up, and that's what has me nervous. I think on paper and in reality, the Broncos are a better football team than the Colts at a lot of positions on the field on both sides of the ball, but this is still the NFL. We watched the Carolina Panthers, who just in the microcosm of this season were dubbed the worst team in the NFL, and benched their first number 1 overall draft pick quarterback for a week because of a car accident. And now are sticking it. They're a dropped Xavier Legette touchdown pass away from beating one of the best teams in the NFC and the Eagles, and
almost beat the Chiefs a couple weeks ago.
So the NFL, the distance between the teams that are bad and the teams that are really good is not that far, especially on an any given Sunday type of scenario. So I have faith that the Broncos are still going to have positive momentum that they had before the bye coming out of the bye, although I acknowledge the fears, about,
They got Monday to Monday. They got a full week off.
Interrupting the flow.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you what, if this is like a 6-point game halfway through the fourth quarter, I'm going to be a little nervous.
Well, and it's not going to be an Atlanta game. Like, as much as we all want another laugher, it just doesn't have that vibe. I don't think it's going to be another Atlanta game, because another blowout.
This Colts team knows that their season's on the line here.
This is their season.
So you've got a team that, even though they've underperformed, still has playmakers on both sides of the ball. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's not a nobody. No. Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, Anthony, these are not nobodies, especially
Alec Pierce can catch the deep ball.
Yeah.
What burned the Broncos last week? The deep ball.
Yep.
And like every week when I'm watching Red Zone, Alec Pierce is catching a 60-yard touchdown pass.
Mo Alley Cox has like 19-inch hands and can catch that. He's a red zone threat. I'm here with it. If I'm going to skip to the end, I'll give it right now. I think the Broncos are going to win this weekend, but I just think it's important because let's not forget that there's more on the line specifically this week than just a playoff berth. It is possible that the Broncos make the playoffs still if they lose this week, but what winning this week does, in addition to really solidifying that, it solidifies their first winning season since 2016.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And that's something and they're in a position to do it with a month to play.
Right. And I know Sean got asked about it and totally downplayed it. Sean said, we have higher aspirations than a winning record. Well, guess what? For Broncos country, Richie, there is something symbolic about that. Like, we have been beaten down time and time and time again. And even 2016 wasn't all that pleasant. They were trying to defend a Super Bowl title and they missed the playoffs. No one at the time thought, well, at least they went 9-7. And now, almost a decade later, to get to a winning record will be a big deal.
No, it
for
will
the
be.
fans. For the fans, maybe not for Sean. For the fans, it will be.
Yep, and I think it will be, not that there's that many of them left, but I think it will be a big deal for the players who've been on this team for the last 2, 3, 5.
Garrett Bowles has never had a winning record.
In Garrett
Courtland
Bowles'
Sutton's
case, his
never had a winning
entire
record.
career.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot at stake here besides just moving it from like a 67% chance to an 85% chance or whatever the numbers shake out to be in the playoffs. And another thing, I wouldn't call it a key to the game. It's more of a suggestion. And I had this debate with James Merrillat yesterday, is I think it's vital, if in terms of a key to the game, the Broncos have to run the football better. They have to figure out a way to get momentum in the run game. We saw a little bit of life out of Jaleel McLaughlin in that Cleveland game, and there's been some flashes from guys throughout the season. I'm not at like the point with Javonte Williams like I was with Alexander Georgiev toward the end, where I'm like, I just don't want to see him out there anymore ever. I'm not quite there.
Yeah.
But I think he's a liability in the run game. I think he is above average and still can contribute as a pass protector in late down situations. But I also think that being his only real valuable skill set is a tell for a defense. If it's 3rd and 4 or longer, and Javonte Williams comes out onto the field, the defense doesn't have to worry about keying any kind of play action or any kind of secondary evaluation, because Javonte's not going to run the ball.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, there was 7 major storylines in the Browns game. I mean, the 2 pick sixes, the pass to Mims, Jameis 497, Judy's career night, lost in all that, Richie. Jaleel looked like the guy. Like, I'm going to start calling him 7-yard Jaleel, because it felt like every time he got the football, he got 7 yards. And I think all year it's been this committee type deal. Committee's got to die on Sunday.
Right.
Jaleel McLaughlin needs to be the starter, and then he needs to get 15 to 18 carries. Estime gets 2 or 3, Javonte gets 2 or 3. Like, that's how I want to see the balance on Sunday.
I'm fine with, I agree with the front half of your statement, and I understand. I say that acknowledging that Jaleel McLaughlin's got some physical limitations that Javonte or even Estime don't have with his size, and people have made the comparison between him and Phillip Lindsay and things like that.
That's unfair to Phillip Lindsay.
It's unfair to Phillip Lindsay because Phillip Lindsay, albeit in a similar archetype, had much more explosiveness and much stronger ability to hit the hole between the tackles and still absorb contact than what we've seen from Jaleel. Doesn't mean Jaleel can't do some of those things or develop more in those areas, but I don't want to do a disservice to our guy, Phillip Lindsay, who Sean Payton, just like most of Broncos country, I think would kill to have Phillip Lindsay level production and explosiveness out of the backfield. I agree with you. I think Jaleel needs to be the starter, and we need the committee needs to die. I like the way you phrase that, because how often have we heard, like, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none, right? Unless you're Pete Carroll, who said Geno Smith and Drew Lock, he has 2 starting quarterbacks. So he's the exception.
How'd that work out?
So if you've got, if you've got 3 or 4 running backs like the Broncos had, even though Bidet's been on injured reserve, if you got 4 running backs, do you really have one? And it kind of doesn't feel like we do. I think you got to give Jaleel the opportunity. And I'll say this is what I said to James yesterday that he disagreed with. I think you need to try to give more trust in Audric Estime and have him try to be your closer or your short yardage back to, again, remove some of the tell. Is Javonte a better pass blocker than anybody else on the roster at the running back position? Yes. But do I think that Audric Estime can't develop into some of those things, or is it worth having a one-dimensional player in the backfield like that? Because, I mean, if you don't think Audric Estime can develop into a pass blocker, why'd you draft him? You know what I mean? You drafted him essentially to be Javonte's replacement. They have the same type of build. They have the same kind of running style, in the same way that I think Devon Vele was drafted to be Tim Patrick light. So I think that Jaleel needs to be the starter, but I don't think Jaleel can be your closer. I think that there are specific down and distance situations that Jaleel is going to be better at, and opportunities to maximize what he's good at. And I wouldn't hate mixing Marvin Mims in there, and maybe Mims can develop into some of that joker role that we know Sean Payton likes so much, and use his explosiveness and athleticism. But I think you've got to start giving some more opportunity to Audric Estime, and you take it away in some areas from Javonte, because if and when the Broncos get to the playoffs, and I think they will, you can't run the football as ineffectively as you have been. They've got to try to figure. I'm not even worried about next year or beyond and what we do from there. I'm talking about next month. with how they approach the postseason, they've got to run the ball better.
Yeah, no, they definitely do. The only pushback I'll give you is that Jalil's been really good around the end zone. Okay. Like I think about the touchdown in Tampa Bay. Like that was such a slick move. He had another one that's not coming to top of mind, but it was like, oh, I can't believe he just got in there. But to your point, the closer thing, who did Sean close with in Kansas City? He closed with Audric Estime, and we were all holding our breath because that was right in the height of Estime's fumbling problems. But guess what? Estime did his job. They had a 35-yard chip shot to win it. We don't have to rehash all that, but we have seen Estime close before. So while I'm with you, like around the goal line, probably more Estime. Jalil has proven he can get in, to be fair to him. But also, yeah, I think Estime's earned that right. Yeah. But we're knocking on all the wood. We're knocking on all the wood.
I guess what I mean is that Jalil, I think, has shown enough of a body of work and has enough explosiveness to take on the starting role. There's no reason to trot Javonte out there for the first series and then not give him the ball for 10 or 11 carries after that.
No, we don't need the symbolism.
We don't need the symbolism there. But I do think that Jalil, with his body type and the style of offense that we're running, has the potential and the propensity to wear down because of his physical limitations. And that's where I think if you use Audric Estime a little bit more in opportunities to spell Jalil or in specific down and distance or goal to go situations, you can then try to maximize both players instead of just using it, taking half of those carries and giving them to Javonte, even if they're just obvious passing situations.
Well, I think we've reached the same conclusion. It should be a lot of Jalil and some of Audric. And unfortunately, this ain't intramurals. This ain't Little League. This ain't everyone gets an orange slice. We don't even see Javonte on Sunday. My feelings aren't going to be hurt. I'm sorry to say that because he's a nice enough guy, but I think our conclusion here is a lot of Jalil, some of Audric, very little, if none, of Javonte.
The Colorado Avalanche made some moves since the last time you and I have been able to talk about it. And I got a feeling you've got to be pretty happy with things, because when you and I sat in this chair not that long ago, you know, the meatheads like me who were saying, I don't care if it takes trading Mikko Rantanen, bring in Igor Shesterkin, bring in Sorokin, give me a top flight goalie in the NHL who can help take this team on another cup run, and I'll sacrifice 100-point scorer to do it. And you on denversports.com on the air and in the chair that you're currently sitting in have advocated for a little bit more of a measured approach. And hey, I don't need to swing for the fences. I just want to get on base with a goalie. Give me something middle of the pack, and I'll take my chances winning games 5-3, 4-2, you know, in that kind of run. Well, they trade Justus Annunen, they dump Georgie, they bring in the Woods. You got Wedgwood, and you got Mackenzie Blackwood coming from San Jose. Will, I think the Avs have done exactly what you asked for in a sense. So how does it feel?
Well, yeah, and you know, not to pat myself on the back, but I will pat myself on the back. I everywhere, like you said, online, on air, in these chairs, in Mile High Hockey podcast, I said you could attach a prospect like an Ivan and a Nikolai Kovalenko for a middle of the road goaltender with Georgie.
Kovalenko.
And it's like, whoa, did they read my column? Did they listen to me? Because then literally 2 days later, it's Kovalenko and Georgiev for essentially Mackenzie Blackwood, a handful of draft picks, one other player who actually got optioned to the Eagles last night. So long story short, the Avs took the approach I was advocating for. It was time to dump Georgie, but it wasn't time to hit a home run with including a guy like Mikko. It was Georgie and a prospect for a middle-of-the-road goalie. That's exactly what they did. And I think, Richie, what you're getting at is when Georgie was here, we were kind of walking on eggshells because he was still our guy. Now that he's gone, I think we can just be really honest. The Georgiev era wasn't fun. The Stanley Cup run was one of the most fun times I've ever had as a sports fan. The last 2 years, Richie, Alexander Georgiev zapped the fun out of this team. And I'm just going to be honest. It's not personal. I'm just glad he's gone.
Yeah. And listen, I agree with you on that sentiment because I have not been shy about it, nor have many here in town, for relaying the truth, which is that the Avs won a cup with Kemper and Frankie, largely Kemper, who was by save percentage like the worst Stanley Cup winning goalie of all time. But that's not to say that Kemper didn't provide plenty of examples throughout the year that proved that he could deliver what was needed of him in moments. And he did, including in the postseason when he played 3 series with essentially one eye, you know? And so Alexander Georgiev, unlike Darcy Kemper, rarely, if ever, proved that he was capable of elevating and rising to that occasion on any form of consistent basis. And that is what separates the two situations by a pretty large chasm, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that big old ring that Kemper's got that Georgie will never have, I think that was the awkwardness in the locker room too. I'm not going to sit here and tell folks that they hated Georgiev. That'd be too strong of a word, but he never meshed. He never fit in. Like, he never was one of the guys. And yeah, the timing on that's unfortunate because he's coming into a team fresh off a cup run. But when you're throwing these temper tantrums constantly, when you're getting pulled in Buffalo against a middle of the road, if not bad Sabres team down 4-0, 16 minutes into a game, like, at some point the guys are just sick of you. I was on the Zoom with Chris McFarland where he talked about culture. And I think what he was telling us in so many words that McKinnon, McCarr, Rantanen, Taves, Nichushkin, Lehkonen, they just weren't with Georgie anymore. It was huge. I applaud the front office. Wiping out both goalies in 10 days, pretty much unheard of, and they found a way to do it.
Yeah, no, they deserve credit because you and I and others, we've sat in our chairs and in front of our microphones and said, hey, this is not a sit on your thumb situation. You have got to do something. And they did it without,
not only once, but twice. They did it twice.
They did it twice, and they didn't pull the panic lever or smash the red button like me and others were advocating to do. And it wasn't lost on me that, not a couple of days after, having that argument with you that Mikko gets, another hat trick and 5 of his 100+ points. Right. And I was ready to say goodbye to that. Had they done it, I think I still would have been on it. But here's what I'll say. It better work. It better work now. We've got the middle of the road. That middle of the road better be good enough, because you still run the gamble of making the postseason, not winning a cup, and then losing Mikko Rantanen if you don't do something with him between now and then. And it seems like both sides are kind of content to table things. That will bring this discussion will come back months from now, if that's the case, will it not?
Yeah, I mean, if Rantanen walks for nothing, it's obviously a super gutsy gamble. If Rantanen walks with a second Stanley Cup ring, I think we'll all take it, right? Like, no one wants to see
that's why you got to win it.
No one wants to see the Moose leave. But guess what? If the Moose leaves with 2 Stanley Cup rings and he can flash them on his way out of town, we'll all be bummed, but we'll wish him the best. I mean, then it'll be worth it. If we throw a parade this summer, Richie, I would love for them to get an extension done. If it doesn't, oh, well, we'll have the memories of 2 cups in 4 years.
If they win a cup, it will significantly
lessen the blow.
That kind of transition. Yeah. I don't know about you, Will. Maybe you've had better luck than me, but I have not been able to open my mobile device, computer, really my eyes toward any kind of screen in the last 4 to 5 months and not see something related to Travis Hunter. Have you had that same experience?
Yeah. Well, and then last night, man, like I'm watching Thursday Night Football. I'm watching the Avs game, and every 15 minutes, Travis Hunter's winning a new award.
Yeah.
Like, it was insane last night. Good for him. But you're right. It's Hunter mania, and we're lucky as Buffs fans to have it.
Yep. For the second straight year, he wins the Paul Hornung Award. He also became the first college football player to win the Biletnikoff and the Bednarik Award in the same season for the best wide receiver and the best defender. And listen, I'm seeing a lot of discourse on TV, on the radio, online, social media, and all that about, and I feel like we get this anytime somebody wins an award. There's a faction of people that are just up in arms that somebody didn't win it, and most of the time it's like a MAC player or somebody out of Conference USA,
right?
That's some receiver that's got 14,000 receiving yards, playing in the Sun Belt Conference and things like that. And I'm not here for it. What Travis Hunter was able to do at the Power 4 level and ranking at the top of the Power 4 in most major statistical categories on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, he should win both of those awards. And he should tell me a better player, a more versatile player than Travis Hunter the last 2 years in Colorado to win the Paul Hornung Award. And he's going to win the Heisman. So, Will, my question to you here on the way out is, when Travis Hunter wins the award, becoming the first Heisman Trophy winner since the late, great Rashaan Salam from the University of Colorado, after already winning the Bednarik and Biletnikoff in the same year and winning the Paul Hornung for 2 years in a row, will Travis Hunter walk away from CU as the best player to ever don the black and gold?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It's one that's crossed my mind for sure, and I think so. Because I think, Richie, what last night validated, again, winning major awards on offensive and defensive sides of the ball. Yesterday afternoon, he won the AP Player of the Year award. Like, it just validates that Travis Hunter is having the most complete season in college football history. So if you're having the most complete season in college football history, then you're in the argument as the best college player ever, let alone the best college player at the University of Colorado. We respect the greats. We respect the legends. There's been so many of them who have donned the black and gold. But when Hunter's in the conversation for best college player of all time, then it's a slam dunk. He's the best Colorado player of all time. And again, that's with all due respect to all the greats that came before him.
Yeah, because listen, it's not like Travis Hunter is going to have won a national championship at CU like we saw in the early 90s and all that. But from an individual standpoint, I genuinely think it's a very hard argument to say that individually he is not the best player overall, regardless of position, to don the black and gold and play up at Folsom Field. So I really don't know what else to say about it at this point other than,
well, do you agree with my notion it's the most complete season in the history of college football?
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you want to make the argument with some of these awards that the because you and I even made offhanded comments off camera before we were about there's too many of these awards or some, and in some aspects I agree with you. For example, I'll give you an example of what doesn't make sense to me. We've got Shedeur Sanders won the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award, right, for the best upperclassman quarterback. And I'm like, we had to differentiate between the best upperclassman quarterback and just the best quarterback. Is there what senior quarterback had his feelings so hurt or was so slighted that we had to add an award that eliminates superstar freshman and sophomore quarterbacks in college football? But he wins the best upperclassman quarterback award, but then isn't invited to New York as a Heisman finalist when you invited two upperclassmen quarterback that finished behind him in that award. So he's the best upperclassman quarterback, but there's two other upperclassmen quarterback who are Heisman finalists and he's not.
Yeah.
Make it make sense.
No, you can't. And Cam Ward, I think, had a case to be in New York, but it's the Dylan Gabriel one that I think really bothers me.
If he wasn't on an undefeated team.
Really bothers Buffs fans is it's like, he's there to represent Oregon. Well, last time I checked, the Heisman Trophy is an individual award. It's not a team award. You know what could represent Oregon? Go win a natty. That'll represent Oregon. But to have Gabriel there symbolically over Shedeur Sanders is a bummer. Now, I think Shedeur will still be there supporting Travis, but him not being one of the four and CU having two of the four finalists is definitely disappointing.
And to your point about it being the most complete season, because that really has come down to the crux of the argument between Genty and Travis Hunter, is that Ashton Genty, despite playing in the Mountain West, is putting up numbers, statistically speaking, that we haven't seen since the likes of Derrick Henry and even surpassing, in some cases, Heisman Trophy winning running backs in the past and some of the greatest names that have played running back in college football. And have there been players that have played both ways? I mean, Charles Woodson did it, and he won a Heisman. Champ Bailey did it. Miles Jack, I think, played both ways. Like there's been a few. No one's done it at the level that Travis Hunter is doing it, with the volume that Travis Hunter is doing it, while maintaining the level of competition that Travis Hunter has had to face. So we genuinely, and you never say never in these situations, because it wasn't that long ago, Coach Prime was already trying to tell us that there's another Travis Hunter, the younger Travis Hunter, that he's got waiting in the wings. Oh, you just wait and see. So I'm never going to be the guy that says never, but we may never see another player do what Travis Hunter has done this past season and the last 2 years as a whole when you're talking about a body of work in college football.
Yeah, I mean, a handful of snaps on both sides, sure, we'll see that again. But he was out there literally every snap of almost every game. Every snap of every game. And he's playing 120 every week. It was mind-numbing in the best possible way. I should say mind-boggling. And yeah, I'm with you. Like, we may be playing college football in 2070 and never see something like this ever again.
Well, hopefully I'll be around to see it. If we do, 2070 is a long ways off, so you never know. But I
was trying to pick a number that we both still might be walking around it toward the tail end.
It exists within the realm of possibility. Yeah. Well, there's a lot to get into this weekend, football-wise, Avs, Nugs. There's a lot to be excited about, a lot to be nervous about, but a lot to be excited about here in Colorado with at least three of our four major sports teams. Rockies, we're with you in spirit. And I can't wait to dig into it all with you again next week. Will, thank you so much for donating some of your time and sitting in with me. What do we got coming up at denversports.com that we need to be aware of?
Well, you've got a full busy weekend. We're going to have the Heisman covered wall to wall, and then we'll have Broncos Colts all over that too. it's a playoff game, Richie. Let's call it what it is. It is a playoff game. Maybe not in the sense that if they lose, their season's over, but for all intents and purposes, it's their first postseason game since 2015.
Well, we'll be locked into it, I'm sure, as I will be as well, at denversports.com. Give us a like and subscribe on YouTube, all of our social channels at denversports.com. So much amazing content right at your fingertips, 24/7, 365, from guys like Will, Jake Shapiro, Cecil Lammy, Andrew Mason, all of our Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan hosts, all available to you. Shout out to Roy and Darren and Michelle and Greg and everybody listening and commenting in here on the show. We love interacting with you, and I can't wait to catch up with you again next week.